This week on the video version of the Business of Tech, there's a new metric in town, weighted average contract value. Cisco and Salesforce's incentive changes and what we learn. CISA's warnings, the FBI moves, and geopolitics all collide. And AT&T shuts down 3G. All this and more. Hit those like and subscribe buttons, and here are this week's stories. The NPD Group has released research around the U.S. business-to-business reseller channel. 2021 saw strong growth, with year-over-year revenue sales up 12%. Comparing 2021 to 2019, i.e. pre-pandemic, sales grew 8%. B2B software sales were up 16% in the fourth quarter, driven by strong demand for endpoint protection software, up 27%. Work-from-home device revenue sales have begun to slow, per the research. I also want to highlight something in protocol. I'm quoting liberally from the piece. In the SaaS industry, where it's common for a small number of customers to account for the majority of a startup's revenue, traditional metrics like average contract value, ACV, don't always provide the full picture. That's why Lightspeed Venture Partners developed a new metric called weighted average contract value. What is it? It weights customers by revenue rather than equally, attempting to tell more about the business itself. To calculate weighted ACV, take the contract value of each customer and multiply it by the proportion of revenue that customer represents. A customer representing 1% of revenue gets a 1/100th weight, and a customer representing 3% of revenue receives a weight of 3/100ths, and so on. Then, sum all those numbers. Weighted ACV tells you where to look if you want to best understand the revenue of the business. For example, a WACV of $25,000 tells us roughly that the typical dollar of revenue is generated by a $25,000 customer. Thus, revenue retention and churn and other revenue dynamics of the business will tend toward what we'd expect for those kinds of customers. Revenue weighting is especially helpful if the company in question has a large number of customers spending little or zero, contaminating the equal weighted ACV calculation. Now, why do we care? First, I want to note that there are signs of a slowdown amidst the upbeat data. I'm not down on the market, I'm just observing that it's not necessarily a rocket ship either. 12% growth is good, but it's not record-breaking either, and other markets are much hotter. Now, let's talk about metrics. Weighted ACV intrigues me because not all revenue is equal, and companies with diversified revenue are good. For those companies with large number of customers and little spending, this is an excellent way to clarify. Take that as some insight that the venture is trying to get smarter with their data. And while we're covering metrics, Business Insider is again reporting on Cisco's changing sales compensation. According to two Cisco employees familiar with the changes, and quoting the article, salespeople will earn a higher commission when selling subscription-based products like emerging cybersecurity or collaboration software than they would for one-time purchases like networking hardware. The article continues. For some salespeople, though, this change is another example of how they believe Cisco leadership is continually moving goalposts by changing the metrics on which their pay is based. In unrelated compensation news, Salesforce will tie executive pay to diversity and inclusion goals. This was reported earlier this month. Specifically, this means the company's ability to meet diversity and inclusion goals around hiring, retention, and promotions will determine the pay for leaders who are executive VPs and above, including Salesforce co-CEOs Mark Benioff and Brett Taylor. The goals are binary, meaning each measure is either fully achieved by the end of the fiscal year or not. Why do we care? I'm not so pessimistic about Cisco's change as their salespeople are. Why? Because it's clear they're moving where they want to go, subscription, and setting incentives to match. That's smart. And as many owners know, the salespeople you have now may not be the ones of the future if you change direction. Cisco is changing direction, not moving the goalposts. Because, as the Salesforce incentives show, you get what you pay for. They want to achieve diversity and inclusion goals, so they set incentives, and they made it binary too. Either you get it or you don't, no excuses. That's a clear incentive. And financial incentives, as noted time and time again, drive action. 2 notices from CISA to be aware of. First, a list of free cybersecurity services and tools to help organizations increase their security capabilities and better defend against cyber attacks. Quoting Bleeping Computer. While the set is neither comprehensive nor impervious to change, it aims to mature an entity's cybersecurity risk management when combined with baseline security practices for a strong cybersecurity program. The list is a mix of services from CISA, open source utilities, and free tools and services from organizations in the public and private sectors. Second, CISA urged leaders of U.S. critical infrastructure organizations on Friday to increase their organization's resilience against a growing risk of being targeted by foreign influence operations using misinformation, disinformation, and malformation tactics. Multiple influence operations conducted by foreign actors had an impact on U.S. critical services and functions across critical sectors, according to the Cybersecurity Agency. Meanwhile, NIST has released rules that will be used to create a labeling scheme for more secure consumer-facing IoT devices, as well as rules related to creating a cybersecurity label for consumer software. They include a number of recommendations, including unique ways to identify the device, being able to delete all data on it, and devices not to include universal default passwords, among others. The U.S. has indicated that Russia was behind the disruptions of Ukrainian government and banking websites, a top White House official said Friday. Russia on Saturday rejected those claims. And the FBI is launching a new unit dedicated to tracking cryptocurrency crimes and ransomware profits. The Virtual Asset Exploitation Team, VAXU, will help the U.S. government to keep pace with, quote, threat actors who exploit innovations as fast as the marketplace produces them. The FBI's VAXU unit will combine cryptocurrency experts, blockchain analysis, and virtual asset seizure in one place to work investigations and provide training to the rest of the FBI. The specialized unit will form part of the National Cryptocurrency Enforcement Team, a division of the U.S. Justice Department created in late 2021 to investigate the criminal use of digital assets, with a particular focus on virtual cryptocurrency exchanges and other technologies that enable the misuse of cryptocurrency or facilitate criminal activity. Why do we care? One can see all the parts of government involvement. We've got resources, warnings, law enforcement, and geopolitical warfare. Tracking all of this is a role within your organization, formally. Microsoft appears to be saying that Windows 11 Pro Edition users would need to use Microsoft accounts on new installations intended for personal use, as evidenced in a Windows Insider program announcement. While the announcement is mostly about the features to be found by testers in Windows 11 Preview Build 22557, it also included the following paragraph at the end about new Pro Edition installs. Similar to Windows 11 Home Edition, Windows 11 Pro Edition now requires internet connectivity during the initial device setup only. If you choose to set up device for personal use, MSA will be required for setup as well. You can expect Microsoft account to be required in subsequent WIP flights. Mary Jo Foley at ZDNet also chimed in here, quote, Microsoft may or may not make the internet connectivity Microsoft account a permanent thing for Pro variants of Windows 11. As Microsoft officials continue to drive home, the dev channel is for experimentation, and features that debut for testers may never make it into a shipping version of Windows 11. However, my bet is these new requirements will just roll into future builds and releases of Windows 11, and that will be that. Why do we care? I feel like the inevitable next story will be about petitions against this. To be fair, Microsoft hasn't specifically announced the change, so that's likely a solid move if this matters to providers. The use case that I can't get out of my head is the idea of top secret air gap systems intentionally kept off the internet. There must be a way to address this, particularly as Microsoft has a significant investment in government contracting. So before the complete freakout, no, there will be ways to address this somehow. Then again, speaking up is probably smart.
Did you know Cisco helps managed services providers directly? Know about the Cisco Partner Program? Focused on helping partners combine managed services expertise and service creation with innovative Cisco technology and proven go-to-market resources. There's a program option for you. With provider pricing, MDF, and marketing resources, coupled with Cisco's leading technologies including Meraki, Duo, and Umbrella. Learn more with the link right in the show notes.
Gartner has outlined its top 10 government technology trends for 2022, designed to guide public sector-focused providers on digital transformation and mitigate disruption risks. Let's highlight 3. Adaptive security. Gartner predicts that 75% of government CIOs will be directly responsible for security outside of IT, including operational and mission-critical technology environments by 2025. A lack of continued awareness programs, cybersecurity practices embedded throughout an organization, and a robust talent acquisition team can disrupt an organization's response to security threats. Anything as a service. Gartner projects that 95% of new IT investments made by government agencies will be made in anything as a service solutions over the next 3 years. This includes several IT infrastructure and software services, including those delivered in the cloud as a subscription-based service. And accelerated legacy modernization. When the pandemic began, Gartner said that core legacy business systems failed to handle the surge in demand for these services. CIOs will need to make modernization a continuous activity and not look at it as a one-time investment. Without legacy modernization, return to normal initiatives will be further delayed as COVID-19 variants continue disrupting businesses globally. Meanwhile, new data from Research and Markets provides insights into the size of the managed services market. From the press release, the global managed services market was valued at $161.37 billion in 2021, and it's expected to reach $311.32 billion by 2027, registering a CAGR of 12.44% during the period of 2022 to 2027. Other highlights: a positive impact to the organization's development that adopts such services as they can focus on their core expertise. It's estimated that successful deployment of managed services will help in reducing IT cost by 25 to 45% and will also increase the operational efficiency by 45 to 65%. Now, why do we care? If you aren't finding places to help customers invest in technology, you're not trying. That said, managed services growth of 12% is solid but not explosive. If you're looking for 20% growth, it won't come from recurring IT services alone. You'll be looking for that project, consulting, and advising work that will add to it. And those areas highlighted here seem like solid places to consider. The government remains a great customer, and a concrete example one, too. And about that hybrid workplace, a new Harris Poll survey gives insights into what it might look like. Turns out, women and people of color are generally happier working from home and are likelier than their white male colleagues to want to continue teleworking. 52% of women say they enjoy working remotely and would like to do so in the long term, compared with 41% of men. Just 15% of women say working in person allows for more camaraderie among colleagues, compared with 25% of men. 52% of black workers and 50% of women say working from home is better than working in the office when it comes to advancing in their careers, compared with 42% of men. 63% of black workers and 58% of women say they feel more ambitious when working from home versus the office. Just 46% of men feel the same way. And when asked about their anxieties over returning to offices, 47% of women of color say they worry about having to dress for work, compared with 31% of men. A key quote: "It's output over office politics," says John Garisma, CEO of the Harris Poll. "It's the theater of the office that is often alienating women workers, workers of color, and women of color." Why do we care? This struck me from the piece. Quote, "Executives are nearly 3 times as likely to want to work in person as employees, and sociologists fear that hybrid workplaces will be two-tiered, with leadership and white male employees interacting at the office, while teleworking women and people of color are left behind. Companies could undo significant gains in diversity, equity, and inclusion and culture building with return-to-work mandates," Charisma says. I maintain that this is a good investment for business, positive upside on revenue, reach, and hiring. Theater of the office. Let that one sink in for a while. Where are you spending your time? Finally, AT&T shut down its 3G network on Tuesday. The company notes that phone coverage will not be affected, though the concern is for older devices that will stop working. Examples include 3G connected cars, including some only a few years old, that may require software or hardware upgrades or lose automatic crash notifications and other features entirely. As much as 10% of all public school buses across the country will lose GPS and communication services, according to a filing from the AASA, the School Superintendents Association. San Francisco warned bus riders that more than 650 prediction display systems at bus shelters that rely on AT&T's 3G service would stop displaying real-time information. T-Mobile's sunset date is July 1st, and Verizon by year's end for their 3G services. Why do we care? This gap shows another version of what we covered earlier, legacy computing. This shouldn't have been a surprise, yet it seems to be. If some devices stop working, now you know why or where to look. A quick programming note: I will be on vacation for the rest of this week and next week. There will be bonus episodes, one every other day, and I will return for a regularly scheduled program the week of March 7th. Talk to you then. Thanks for tuning in to This Week in the Business of Tech. Shows come out each week, pulling together the daily podcast. If you like this show, please hit that like button and subscribe to the channel. The content here is possible because of supporters like you. If you want access to shows early, answers to your questions, and private interactions, join our Patreon. It's pay what you want. You decide what the content is worth. Join at patreon.com/MSPradio. Patreons also get access to the written versions of every story as they come out. If you want the stories right away, you can get them on the daily podcast. Find The Business of Tech on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Google Podcasts, or wherever you get your shows. Subscribe links at businessof.tech, and I'll talk to you again next week.